Hello and welcome to Swipe. Coming up, lasting love or a hotbed of disastrous dates. We take a look at how online dating has become big business. Could technology spell the end of the shark cull? How Australian scientists are hoping to help turn the tide of fatalities. Blockbuster brands and indie hits. With the BAFTA Games nominations having just been announced, we check out this year's runners and riders. And if you didn't get any Valentine's Day cards, no need to cry over your value meal for one. We've the antidotes in this week's Games Review. Once upon a time, dating used to be a relatively simple process. If you liked a girl, you just had to get your mate to go up to her, perhaps impress her with a few dance moves, then maybe, if you were lucky, go halves in a taxi at the end of the night. But things have changed, and nowadays millions of people are finding the person they click with by clicking away online. With the creation of dating apps for smartphones, it's become even easier for people to fall in love at first tap. But has it become even more of a game? Katie Spencer has been finding out.
In a psychic city.
A world of romantic possibilities at your fingertips. The incredible success of smartphone dating apps is revolutionising how we go about finding a mate, with millions of people signing up to sites which offer a quick way of hooking up. On sites like Tinder, there's no requirement for a detailed description of your interests. Simply swipe right if you like what you see, swipe left if you don't. A bit of fun, or is it turning dating into a game?
Because it is quite easy to get a date through a dating app, you'll meet up for a drink, and if you don't click, then almost on the way back home, you may jump back on the app and start seeing who else is about.
The popularity of dating apps has even stretched as far as Sochi, with one young snowboarder joking that the number of people using Tinder at the Olympic Village is next level. The immediacy of being able to find a nearby match is undoubtedly a key factor to the success of smartphone dating.
A few end up in dates, and a few end up in meetings, and a few end up in relationships. But I think a lot of the time it's a bit of fun to have a flick through and either see someone you might know or recognise, or just laugh together with your mates and see who you might, fancy.
It can be an addictive experience. The average Tinder user logs onto the site about 11 times a day for around 7 minutes. But is it making us more superficial?
If you have a fairly surface and transactional relationship, it's very easy to just move on to the next one. You just go on your app on the phone, find a new one and start again. I think it's changing the way we form our relationships, actually, and not necessarily in a good way.
The online dating world is a multi-billion-pound industry. A recent survey found 1 in 5 relationships in the UK now starts on the internet. And although an increasing number of people are using apps nowadays, the traditional matching websites don't seem to be worried.
If they find that the frivolous, superficial nature of those apps aren't right for them, they'll tend to migrate to a more traditional dating service, such as paid service, like Lovestruck or Matchery, Harmony, where the predisposition to meet people is that much stronger because they're paying for the service.
With smartphones an integral part of most of our lives these days, it's perhaps only natural that sites which work well with the technology are experiencing such success. Whether or not they're creating a more disposable approach to dating or simply using technology to tap into physical attraction, it's a phenomenon that seems to be transforming how we date. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
You're watching Swipe. Coming up, another reason for Rockstar Games to celebrate as the BAFTA Games nominations are revealed. But first, in Western Australia, there have been massive protests over the government policy allowing sharks to be caught and killed. The controversial decision was made because of an increasing number of attacks in the area. But is a cull the only solution? Reacting to the public's concerns, researchers are finding practical solutions to protect sharks, as Tom Platt now reports.
Catching that elusive big wave should be all that's on your mind when you're out on the water. But more often than not, the worry of what's lurking beneath is a surfer's biggest concern. Even when shark attacks aren't fatal, they leave behind emotional trauma.
I managed to get into the shore and, pretty much, just really scary,
7 people have died from shark attacks in Australia in the past 3 years, but a controversial shark cull has been met with protest. Reacting to this concern, scientists are developing new surfwear and boards that mean a great white is less inclined to take a great bite.
The whole premise of our technology relies around the visual systems of sharks, patterns and colours at different depths that may cause confusion or even have the ability to hide the water user in the water column. And given the spate of increased shark attacks, particularly in our part of the world, in southwest Western Australia, we've sort of felt obligated that we should probably bring this product to market earlier than what we initially intended to.
And in the US, researchers have been developing devices that repel sharks if they get too close.
Sharks are unique because of their nose, and so we're really just exploiting that. Since its nose is really the thing that defines the shark's sensory capabilities as a shark, let's play with that. Let's tweak the magnetic fields or electrical fields and just uniquely repel the sharks. The concern about attacks on beaches, I think it would be a great time now to start looking at magnetic barriers instead of just shark nets, and seeing if erecting barriers can keep the sharks away but let the other sea life pass in and out through the nets.
But even with this wave of new tech, both companies stress these products cannot yet be guaranteed 100% effective. For now, without these assurances, it's likely shark attacks and culls will continue. Tom Platt, Sky News.
You're watching Swipe. Coming up, there's no escaping our underwater friends as we bring you the driving goldfish. But first. Now, some fantastic games have come out in the last year, titles which have sold by the bucket load. But it's always interesting to find out what the critics' picks are, and BAFTA has been announcing its nominations for this year's Games Awards. Philippa Hall has been taking a look.
The Last of Us, set in a post-apocalyptic world not too far in the future, leads the way with 10 nominations across categories including Best Game and Best Story. Others at the front of the pack include the latest instalment of the Grand Theft Auto franchise with 9 nominations, and the lesser-known handheld game Tearaway, developed for the PlayStation Vita, with 8 nominations. Well, here to discuss his favourites and who could walk away with a prize is Richard Coggin. He's a gaming expert and also a developer. Richard, thanks very much for joining us here on Swipe. Just talk me through the game that you think is really going to walk away with these nominations.
Grand Theft Auto 5 is, I think for me, heads above all of the other games out there at the moment. I think it's one of the most incredible games I've ever played personally, and just in terms of its technical achievements, it's always been the game to watch as it's grown over the years, and I think it's going to completely come into its own, and I think it's it's fantastic.
One of your other favourites, you said, was Tomb Raider. Only 3 nominations though. So why do you think that one's going to be one of these successful ones?
Yeah, I still believe it's the storytelling of it, the great narrative, and taking a kind of a very old title in a lot of ways and revamping it and making it very fresh and very new, and taking some of the elements from it, from the original series, and actually making them far more exciting. And I think as well the kind of slickness of it, and when you start playing it, you just get immersed in the actual environment.
In the performer category, Ellen Page, who is an actress, is nominated in this. It's for me sort of a slightly unusual category.
I feel like it's just a transition from films. If you look at all the writers, they're coming from film backgrounds. They're writing, the stories they're telling are exactly the same as if they were for writing for film. So it's exactly the same for the characters that need to be portrayed as well.
So any other favourites that you want to just make sure people are aware of?
I think Device 6 is a potential. I think it's
3 nominations. I think that has.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think it's a kind of forefront of mobile technology in terms of how they're using the kind of storytelling through it as well. It's very unusual kind of gaming, a very unusual style of gaming. We're actually turning the mobile device to move through corridors, and it's actually telling the story by you having to read through it and find out clues.
Richard, thank you very much for your insight on all those games.
You're watching Swipe. Coming up, we're looking at love in this week's Games Review. But first, here's a roundup of anything you might have missed over the last few days. Much to the upset of thousands of fans, Flappy Bird is dead. The smartphone app that became an internet sensation has been withdrawn by its creator. This is what he posted on Twitter, which doesn't really tell us much about why the game was removed from sale. It's especially strange, given that it had become one of the most downloaded mobile games ever.
Ernie!
And, you know, you're onto something when people start doing parodies of your idea. Sesame Street has launched its own take on the game, called Flappy Bert. There are calls to dilute how much control America has over the internet. Europe's executive body has called for more transparency and less influence from the US over the institutions which control the mechanics of the internet. That's things like assigning web addresses. Transatlantic relations are still pretty delicate, following whistleblower Edward Snowden's spying allegations.
We want to make sure everyone has a voice in the debate. We want to identify and solve conflicts of jurisdiction, and we want to officially anchor internet governance in principles of freedom.
Apple has been outlining its latest efforts to ensure it has an ethical supply chain. In its annual Responsibility Progress Report, the sourcing of minerals is flagged up as a new priority. It's begun a name-and-shame crackdown of suppliers that might be sourcing minerals from conflict zones where human rights abuses are taking place. Well, it certainly hasn't been the best of weeks to own bitcoins. Their value dropped sharply from £420 to just over £320. It came after Mt. Gox, one of the largest trading exchanges, reported it had found a flaw in the virtual currency's underlying software. And finally, playing a game of fetch with your pet goldfish might sound like a bizarre idea, but it could just happen. Dutch design lab Studio Deep have come up with a remote-controlled tank driven by the fish itself. Using a camera which monitors the direction your pet is swimming in, a motor powers the device and steers it around. Now, if only he could remember where he's going. Love it or hate it, it's the time of year when romance is thrust upon us. So we called upon Swipe's chief heartbreaker, Lucy James, to help us out with a spot of Valentine's Day escapism.
So Where's My Valentine is a reskinning of the hit Disney mobile game Where's My Water. You have an adorable little alligator called Swampy. He lives in the sewers and he just wants to have a shower. So you clear a path and let the water drain into the pipe so it can go into Swampy's shower. Obviously there are all these obstacles in the way, very physics-based game, so you have to hit switches and things which will move the water in one direction, this kind of thing. Where's My Valentine is, as I said, it's a reskinning, so everything's been made to look all adorable and Valentine's-y. So in the environments themselves, all the rock formations will be heart-shaped. Everything has a lovely pink tinge, and it's a great, it's free as well, and it's a very, very addictive game. Sims has been going for around 10 years now, and it's kind of the ultimate god game. In The Sims 3 especially, you can create different characters and you can control what they look like, what they sound like, and you basically control their life. In the Valentine's Day spirit, you can meet a potential romantic partner, and if you have the Generations expansion pack, you can take them out on the town for a nice meal. If you work at it and you form a really strong bond with these Sims, you can eventually, they can become your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you can do what The Sims innocently refers to as woohooing, and then you can, move in together, you can get married and have little Sim kids. Sims 4 is coming out hopefully Q3, Q4 later this year. They're really putting an emphasis on how the Sims feel, so they'll be able to be affected by things in their environment. If something goes on that they don't like, they'll be visibly disgusted, or if they see someone that makes them laugh, they'll be happy, and it's quite cute, and it gives this whole other dimension to your little character.
Too bad, Andre. This night belongs to Ollie.
Catherine's a little bit of an oddball choice for Valentine's Day games, as it involves your main character, Vincent Brooks, cheating on his girlfriend.
What is this place?
He is in his early 30s and he has a long-term girlfriend named Catherine, with a K. But she starts getting broody, she starts thinking about marriage and babies, and Vincent gets a bit scared, so he unwittingly starts an affair with a girl named Catherine, with a C. The main part of the gameplay takes place in Vincent's nightmares, where it's a very tricky block-based puzzler. So you're kind of scrambling at these blocks and trying to avoid things falling on you, you're trying to avoid spikes coming at you, ice, There's also these giant bosses that are sort of the manifestation of Vincent's darkest fears. So there'll be his girlfriend wearing a wedding dress and holding a knife. In the daytime, you know, he can go to the bar with his friends. He can text each one of the girls, because depending on how you associate with each one of the girls changes the outcome of the video game. But yes, it's a very different choice for Valentine's Day. It's not maybe about a typical relationship, but it is a great game. It's one that's worth playing.
That's your lot for this week. Remember, you can catch up with the breaking tech stories all week on Sky News for iPad, our smartphone apps, and skynews.com. We'll see you next time.